I've already settled it for myself, so flattery and criticism go down the same drain, and I'm quite free. And very hard thing to put into action to actually integrate, but it's become so ingrained in my mind because it was there before it actually applied to me.
A storm of shocking claims is sweeping across headlines, leaving audiences stunned and deeply divided. Reports suggest Prince Harry was left emotional after explosive allegations surfaced involving Meghan's past. But how much of it is truth, and how much is speculation? As rumors spread and narratives collide, the situation is becoming increasingly complex and controversial. With so many unanswered questions and conflicting accounts, the real story remains unclear. So, what exactly is being revealed? Who is behind these claims, and why is this unfolding in such a dramatic way now? Now, do you think this moment revealed something deeper about the royal family? Let us know in the comments, and subscribe so more people can discover stories like this. When the silence broke without warning. The moment began in perfect stillness, the kind that had become almost expected outside Buckingham Palace. The guards stood firm, unmoving beneath the weight of tradition, their red uniforms bright against the summer sky. Tourists watched, cameras raised, waiting for a routine display of discipline. Nothing suggested that anything was about to change. Then it happened. Without warning, one of the guards lost balance. His body stiffened for a fraction of a second, as though trying to resist what was coming. But the heat had already taken its toll. Under the intense summer sun, layered beneath heavy wool and the towering bearskin hat, his strength gave way. He fell forward in a motion that looked almost practiced, striking the ground in what is known as fainting to attention. It was controlled, but it was sudden, and it was impossible to ignore. The silence shattered instantly. Gasps broke out from the crowd, sharp and unfiltered. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Phones that had been held up for photos now captured something entirely different. For a brief moment, confusion spread. Some thought it was part of the ceremony. Others quickly realized it was not. The shift in energy was immediate. Concern replaced curiosity. People leaned forward, eyes fixed on the unmoving figure, unsure of what they were witnessing. Nearby officials reacted with urgency, but also restraint. Protocol dictated order, even in moments like this. Movements were quick but controlled. No one shouted. No one panicked openly. Yet the tension was unmistakable, hanging in the air as heavily as the heat itself. Amid that growing tension, something else happened. Not loud, not dramatic, but just as important. A small figure, standing slightly apart from the crowd, noticed. Princess Charlotte had been present, observing the ceremony like so many others. But unlike most, she did not simply watch and move on. The sudden collapse caught her full attention. Where others saw disruption, she saw something more immediate, more human. Her posture shifted, her focus narrowed. The noise around her seemed to fade as her eyes remained fixed on the guard lying on the ground. There was a pause, brief but meaningful, as those around her began to guide movement, to restore order, to continue as expected. But Charlotte did not look away. The moment held her in place, not out of curiosity, but out of concern that was clear even from a distance. While adults measured their responses, balancing duty with urgency, her reaction came from somewhere far simpler and far more direct. She did not see ceremony. She did not see protocol. She saw someone who had fallen. And in that moment, as the scene continued to unfold around her, Princess Charlotte made a quiet decision that would soon change the tone of everything that followed. While officials calculated their next move and protocol held everyone in place, one quiet decision began to shift everything. Princess Charlotte saw past the ceremony and stepped forward with purpose. But in breaking that unspoken boundary, had she revealed something the palace rarely shows, or something deeper still? Keep watching. The choice that broke through protocol. As the tension lingered in the air and movement slowly returned around the fallen guard, the scene began to reorganize itself with quiet precision. Officials stepped in, not with panic, but with controlled urgency shaped by years of training. Every action had purpose. Every movement followed an unspoken order. The space was being managed, contained, and carefully restored to normal. For most of those watching, the moment had already begun to fade. People were gently encouraged to shift their attention, to step back, to allow the situation to be handled by those responsible. Princess Charlotte did not follow. While others adjusted and moved with the flow, she remained still, her small frame unmoving against the shifting crowd. Her gaze stayed fixed on the exact spot where the guard had fallen. The initial shock that had crossed her face moments earlier had settled into something deeper. There was no confusion now, no hesitation. What replaced it was focus, clear and steady, as though she understood that something important had just happened. She wanted to understand. Quietly, without drawing attention, she began to ask what had taken place. The responses came quickly but carefully. Those around her chose their words with caution, aware of who they were speaking to. The guard had collapsed. The heat had been severe. It was something that could happen under such conditions. The explanation was simple, almost routine, shaped to reassure rather than alarm. But it did not satisfy her. In her hand, she held a small water bottle. It seemed like nothing more than a passing detail, something easily overlooked in the larger moment. Yet the way she held it began to change. Her fingers tightened slightly, her grip becoming more deliberate as she listened. Her attention did not drift, it sharpened. The more she heard, the more it became clear that the moment was not closing for her. It was opening. Around her, a quiet shift took place. The expectation remained unchanged. She would be guided away. The scene would move forward without her involvement. That was how such moments were handled. Order would be restored. Distance would be maintained. Protocol would take precedence over everything else. It was a system that had been followed for generations, one that left little room for deviation. But Charlotte did not step back. Instead, she expressed her intention in the simplest way possible. She wanted to see him, not from afar, not through explanation, but directly. The request was soft, almost gentle, yet it carried a quiet firmness that could not be ignored. It caused those around her to pause, if only for a moment. There was hesitation. The adults nearby understood the structure they were meant to uphold. They understood the boundaries that existed in situations like this. But they also saw something else. They saw the clarity in her expression, the steadiness in her voice, the absence of uncertainty. This was not defiance. It was something far more grounded, a refusal to look away from what she had witnessed, a decision, formed without instruction, to remain present in a moment others were already moving past. For Charlotte, the event had not ended when the guard fell. It had only just begun to take shape. The space between expectation and action grew thinner with each passing second. Those responsible for her movement exchanged brief, measured glances, silently weighing the situation. The protocol pointed in one direction. Her resolve pointed in another direction. And in that fragile balance, it became unmistakably clear that she was not going to turn away. Tension tightened as silent glances passed between those in charge, each weighing protocol against an unexpected resolve. One path preserved order, the other followed instinct. But why did a young princess refuse to step back when everything around her demanded it? And what did she see that others missed? Stay tuned. A quiet question that changed the moment. The decision was made with little ceremony, almost as if it happened in the space between one breath and the next. After a brief pause and careful consideration, the path in front of her was no longer blocked. Those around Princess Charlotte shifted subtly, creating just enough room for her to move forward. No announcement marked the change. No clear signal was given. Yet something had quietly been allowed. Moments earlier, the urgency had been impossible to ignore. The fallen guard had already been moved away from the public eye, carried out of the open courtyard and into a quieter area within Buckingham Palace where recovery could take place without distraction. The sharp tension of the incident still lingered, but here, inside, it had taken on a different form. The atmosphere was no longer rigid. It had softened. The strict formality that defined the courtyard gave way to a controlled calm. The noise of the crowd had disappeared, replaced by a silence that felt intentional. Every movement was measured. Every voice, when it came, was low. The focus had narrowed entirely to the guard who had collapsed under the weight of the summer heat. He lay still, his uniform no longer a symbol of perfect control, but a visible reminder of what he had endured. The heavy fabric that once stood for discipline now rested against him with a different meaning. The strain of the moment had not fully left him. It lingered in the quiet rise and fall of his breathing, in the stillness that followed such a sudden fall. Princess Charlotte stepped into that space with a presence that felt both small and deeply significant. The water bottle remained in her hand, held carefully, almost protectively, as she moved closer. There was no urgency in her steps, yet there was no hesitation either. Each movement was deliberate, guided not by instruction, but by something far more instinctive. Her attention did not shift. It stayed fixed on the man before her. For a brief moment, no one spoke. Those nearby watched in silence, aware that what was unfolding did not belong to protocol. This was not planned. It had not been arranged or expected. It was simply happening, and because of that, it carried a different kind of weight. Charlotte moved closer until the distance between them no longer reflected the usual boundaries. The space that once separated role from reality had quietly narrowed. She stood there, close enough now that the guard was no longer just a figure in uniform, but a person recovering from something real. Then she spoke. "Are you okay?" The words were simple, almost disarmingly so. There was no attempt to shape them into anything formal, no effort to match the structure of the environment around her. They came exactly as they were meant to, direct, honest, unfiltered, and in that moment, their impact was immediate. For the guard, trained to maintain composure through every possible condition, this was something entirely different. His role had always required distance, silence, control that never slipped, even under pressure. But this was not a command. It was not part of duty. It was a concern. Something shifted. The structure that had defined him in the courtyard, the stillness, the restraint, the unspoken rules, gave way, if only slightly, to something more human. His response was quieter, less guarded, shaped not by training, but by the moment itself. The discipline remained, but it was no longer the only thing present. Those watching could see the change, even if they could not fully explain it. The interaction was brief, almost fragile in its simplicity, yet it carried a weight that extended far beyond the room. Nothing dramatic had taken place in terms of action, yet the meaning was unmistakable. A young princess, guided not by expectation but by instinct, had stepped into a space where few ever go. Not to challenge it, but to connect with it. And in doing so, she revealed something rarely seen in moments like this. A quiet connection that moved beyond uniform, beyond rank, and beyond the structure that usually defines such encounters, beginning to reshape how that moment would be remembered long after the silence returned. In a moment, few noticed, something quietly shifted. A young princess stepped beyond protocol, guided only by instinct and care. No command, no rehearsal, just a choice that reached past rank and tradition. But did that brief encounter reveal a deeper truth about duty, humanity, and the monarchy itself? Let's find out. The weight behind the uniform. What had just unfolded inside that quiet recovery space could not be fully understood without stepping back and looking beyond the moment itself. The fall, The concern and the brief exchange were not isolated. They were connected to something much deeper, something built into the very nature of the role the guard had been performing. Standing watch outside Buckingham Palace is often seen as ceremonial, almost symbolic. But in reality, it is a demanding test of endurance shaped by strict rules that leave almost no room for comfort, adjustment, or personal response. The uniform alone begins to reveal part of that reality. The bright red jacket, designed to stand out and represent tradition, is made from thick material that traps heat rather than allowing it to escape. It is not designed for comfort, it is designed for appearance and durability. Above it sits the bearskin hat, tall and striking, yet heavy and insulating. It presses down while holding in warmth, creating an environment where heat cannot easily disperse. During the summer months, especially under conditions like those seen in 2022, the sun does not simply shine on the guards, it builds around them. The heat becomes something they carry, something that surrounds and settles into every layer of their uniform with no clear relief. But the challenge is not only physical, it is built into the structure of their duty. Guards are trained to remain completely still while on post. Every movement is controlled, deliberate, and limited to specific commands. They cannot shift their weight freely, wipe sweat from their faces, or respond to discomfort in ways that most people would instinctively do. Even the smallest adjustment can break the image they are expected to maintain. The expectation is absolute. They stand, no matter the conditions, presenting a constant image of discipline that has been preserved for generations. It is within this structure that the risk begins to grow. As the body continues to endure rising temperatures or prolonged strain, it eventually reaches a point where it can no longer compensate. There is no gradual release, no visible warning that allows for a quiet step away. Instead, when the limit is reached, the result is sudden. The fall is not uncontrolled or chaotic. It follows a specific pattern known as fainting to attention, a controlled collapse designed to protect the individual while maintaining the dignity of the role they represent. This is not considered rare. It is something they are trained to handle. The incident involving the guard Princess Charlotte had just visited was not the first, and it will not be the last. There have been other moments where the combination of heavy uniform, extreme weather, and the demand to remain motionless has pushed guards to that same breaking point. Each situation reflects the same underlying reality. What appears to the public as effortless stillness is, in truth, a constant balance between discipline and the physical limits of the human body. And this balance does not shift with the seasons. When summer fades, the challenge changes, but does not disappear. Heavy coats replace lighter layers, and the cold introduces its own form of strain. Long hours in freezing temperatures bring stiffness, numbness, and fatigue. Yet the expectation remains exactly the same. The posture does not change. The stillness is preserved. The role continues. Through every condition, through heat and cold alike, the guards remain in place, holding their position as symbols of continuity and tradition. And yet, beneath that unwavering exterior, there is a reality that few truly see. A reality where discipline is constantly tested, where the body is pushed to its limits, and where moments like the one Charlotte witnessed are not accidents, but part of the quiet cost of standing perfectly still in a role that demands everything without ever asking for acknowledgement. Through scorching heat and freezing winds, they remain motionless, carrying a burden few truly see. Beneath the silence and discipline, something unseen begins to surface. But how long can the human body endure before that hidden cost finally reveals itself? Stay glued. Behind the still faces, something else exists. The strength required to stand guard does not end with physical endurance. Beneath the polished boots and carefully held posture lies a quieter reality, one that rarely reaches the public eye. To those watching from behind barriers, the guards appear almost unbreakable. Their faces remain steady. Their expressions reveal nothing. It creates the impression that emotion has been removed entirely. But that impression is not the full truth. Away from the formal setting, the same guards who hold their composure in front of thousands return to a world that is far more human. Within the barracks, the strict silence of duty gives way to conversation, shared experiences, and moments that would never be seen during a ceremony. The discipline remains, but it is no longer the only thing defining them. There are stories that circulate quietly among them, reminders that even the most controlled roles are carried out by individuals who feel, react, and sometimes lose control in the most ordinary ways. One such moment involved a young recruit, newly assigned and still adjusting to the pressure of public duty. During a formal ceremony, surrounded by watching crowds and the weight of expectation, he did something completely unplanned. He sneezed. The sound broke through the silence, small but impossible to ignore. For those observing, it was unexpected. Some visitors laughed openly, surprised to see even a brief crack in the rigid image they had come to witness. Nearby guards, trained to remain unaffected, held their positions. Outwardly, nothing changed. But behind that stillness, the effort to maintain control became even greater. Later, away from the public view, the response was not punishment or criticism. Instead, the recruit was met with understanding. A senior guard acknowledged the moment with a quiet remark that carried both humor and acceptance. It was not treated as failure. It was treated as part of the experience. A reminder that no matter how strict the role may be, no one is entirely removed from human instinct. These moments build something deeper than discipline. They create a sense of connection among the guards, a bond shaped not just by duty, but by shared understanding. Each knows the pressure the others carry. Each understands the effort required to maintain composure when the body or mind pushes back. That shared experience becomes its own form of support, one that does not need to be spoken aloud. This contrast between what is seen and what is lived quietly shapes the role in ways that are rarely recognized. The guards may appear distant, even unapproachable, but beneath that exterior is a layer of emotion held carefully in place. And it is precisely that hidden humanity that made Princess Charlotte's simple act stand out even more. Behind the rigid silence and unyielding posture, something far more human is quietly unfolding, unseen by most. If emotion is meant to stay hidden, why did one small gesture from Princess Charlotte break through so powerfully? And what does it reveal about everything we thought we understood? Stay with us. When small gestures begin to form a pattern. What Princess Charlotte had done in that quiet recovery room did not remain an isolated moment. When placed alongside other events, it began to reflect something more consistent, something that extended beyond a single act of concern. There were signs, subtle but clear, that this kind of response was not accidental. It was part of a growing pattern. One such moment unfolded not long after, during a rainy day in 2025 at Buckingham Palace. The weather had shifted dramatically, replacing heat with relentless rain. Guards remained at their posts, just as they always did, their uniforms absorbing the downpour, their posture unchanged despite the discomfort. Among them was a guard standing completely still as water soaked through his bearskin hat and ran down his face. From a distance, it looked like any other day of duty. But once again, Princess Charlotte was present. Instead of observing from afar, she stepped closer, holding an umbrella. It was a simple object, yet in that moment, it carried meaning far beyond its purpose. She moved beside the guard, raising the umbrella to shield him from the rain. The gesture was quiet, almost understated, but impossible to overlook. Then, in a voice that echoed something familiar, she spoke words that carried both respect and understanding. "Thank you for your service." The phrase itself had been heard before, but its repetition in that setting gave it new weight. It mirrored the tone of someone else who had come to express the same recognition. King Charles had also shown a similar awareness in his own way. During the harsh winter of 2024, when temperatures dropped and guards stood for hours in the cold, he took steps that were not widely announced but deeply felt by those involved. It was reported that he ensured guards received thermoses of hot tea during their breaks, a small but meaningful gesture that acknowledged the conditions they endured. There were other moments as well: quiet exchanges, brief words of gratitude, a recognition that did not seek attention but carried significance for those on the receiving end. Taken together, these actions began to form a connection that was difficult to ignore. They pointed toward a shared understanding within the royal family, one that recognized the demands placed on the guards and responded with gestures that, while simple, carried genuine care. Princess Charlotte's actions now seemed to fit within that same space. What she had done was not guided by instruction, yet it aligned with something already present. A sense that behind the structure of duty and tradition, there was room for acknowledgement, for empathy, and for moments that reminded everyone involved that the role of a guard was not just symbolic, but deeply human. No one instructed her to act, yet in that quiet moment, something unseen seemed to guide her beyond protocol and tradition. Could it be that beneath the rigid structure of duty lies an unspoken connection that even the youngest royal instinctively understood, long before anyone else recognized it? Let's unravel the details. The meaning behind a moment few expected. When the attention faded and the routines of the palace quietly resumed, the impact of what had happened did not disappear with it. For the guard who had collapsed during the summer of 2022, the experience remained far more than a physical incident caused by heat and exhaustion. It became something personal, something that reached beyond duty and into a space that guards rarely find themselves in: recognition. For most guards, the nature of their role is built on being seen but not engaged. They stand in full view of the public, photographed, observed, even admired, yet direct interaction is almost non-existent. The structure of their position creates distance. They are present, but not approached, acknowledged in general, but rarely on an individual level. That is what made this moment different. When Princess Charlotte stepped forward and asked a simple question, it shifted that balance in a way that could not be measured by protocol. The guard, trained to maintain composure through every condition, was not responding to a command or fulfilling a role. He was being spoken to as a person. The question did not carry expectation. It carried care. For someone whose identity during duty is defined by stillness and silence, that kind of interaction holds a different weight. It is not something that happens often. Years of service can pass without a single direct exchange. The routine remains constant. The expectations never change. Guards learn to exist within that structure, accepting that their role is to represent something larger than themselves. Individual recognition is not part of the design. Yet in that brief encounter, that design shifted. Princess Charlotte did not break any rules in a dramatic way. There was no disruption, no challenge to authority, no visible change to the structure that surrounds royal duty. What she did was far quieter. She stepped across an invisible line that most would not even notice, choosing to respond to the moment as it was, rather than as it was expected to be handled. That choice carried meaning. It revealed a side of the monarchy that is not always visible in formal settings, a side that exists not in ceremonies or traditions, but in small, unplanned actions that reflect genuine awareness. Her gesture did not alter the system, but it offered a glimpse into something within it. A reminder that behind the layers of history and protocol, there are individuals capable of seeing beyond the roles assigned to them. For the guard, that moment remained as more than a memory of collapse. It became a point of connection, one that stood apart from the routine of service. A brief exchange that replaced distance with presence, even if only for a few seconds. And in that quiet shift, something lasting began to take shape. So, what do you think? Was this just a simple act of kindness? Or a quiet moment that revealed something deeper about duty, humanity, and the future of the monarchy? We'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.